So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good morning. I'm going to jump right in with an important Broadway show that hopefully will be revived once the pandemic is over, called Dear Evan Hansen. It's a story about a young man with social anxiety who yearns to make a connection with his peers. And he sings a song in this show. And I just want to read to you from the first parts of that song because I'm sure it resonates with so many. It certainly does with myself. And that is these words: I've learned to slam on the brake before I even turn the key. Before I make a mistake, before I lead with the worst of me. Give them no reason to stare, no slipping up if you slip away. So I got nothing to share. No, I got nothing to say. And then he says something remarkable. Step out of the sun if you keep getting burned. Step out of the sun because you've learned. Such deep words that leave so many with anxiety. We're afraid to try things because we know in the past we have gotten burned. We're afraid to step out into the sun because we feel the rays burning down on us. We're afraid to interact because of the response we may receive. This pandemic has made us afraid of coming too close to someone else, afraid of touching a surface that someone else has touched, afraid of the food we bought, afraid of the fruit that we've brought home because maybe it was touched by somebody else as they made their selection, afraid to go outside. There are large swaths of people who are afraid to get vaccinated, and an even larger swath of people who are afraid they're never going to get vaccinated. Some are afraid that this pandemic will win and every social interaction we have ever had will be eternally altered, while others afraid that this isn't the worst pandemic that we will see as human beings living on this planet. The loss is real. The loss of life, the loss of livelihood has been significant. 500,000 Americans have died. 500,000. Billions of dollars of lost revenue for businesses have been felt in the pocketbooks of average people. Food lines like the Great Depression that wrap around blocks and blocks. Hospitals near capacity in some places and over capacity in others. A colleague of mine, may his memory remain for a blessing, Rabbi Alan Lew, wrote in 2003, almost prophetically, this is real and we're completely unprepared. This is how I felt the day I brought home my son from the hospital. So much can go wrong. And certainly in my family, so much did go wrong. But you can't live that way. So you'll hear me say this a number of times throughout this morning's commentary. The other shoe in life may drop and it may not drop. But you can't wait living for it to happen. These are moments that traumatize us. PTSD is real. And when this pandemic is over, we're all going to have it. But in time, those feelings will take a back seat. They'll rear their head periodically, but then they'll settle down. And we'll learn how to quiet the fear, I promise you. The other shoe may or may not drop, but don't wait. Don't live waiting for it. There's a terrible moment in the Torah that every parent laying in bed at night, staring up at the ceiling, is afraid of. It's such a traumatic moment. It's left me so wounded that everything I read in the Torah seems to be making a commentary on that one moment. Even when there's nothing there, I hear it in the back of my head. See, that's the nature of true trauma. We won't read this story for many more weeks, but it still haunts me. It's so terrifying. The text is found in the book of Leviticus, V'tetzei eish milifnei Adonai v'tochal otam, v'yamutu lifnei Adonai, and a fire came forth from God, and it consumed them, and they died before the instance of the Lord. Vayikra chapter 10, verse 2, talks about the death of the two sons of Aaron. Well into the book of Leviticus, possibly the driest part of the Torah, the most tedious part of the Torah, we're shocked by a story that leaves two children of the first family of Judaism dead. And in that place, the rabbis rush in with so many commentaries, it's hard to sift through them all. And it has become one of the most analyzed texts in all of Torah. The reason I bring it up here in this week's Torah reading is because we're introduced to Aaron and his four boys, Nadav and Avihu, Elazar v'Tamar. And I can't help but ask the question, if Aaron had known now in this week's Parsha how it would end in a few chapters from now, would he have let his children go into the family business? More simply put, if Aaron had known his two sons would die in service in the tabernacle, would he have ever let them into that space? Look, I know it's an impossible question. No one can predict the future. But the truth is, it's how so many of us live our lives. We guess at our future, and we second guess, and so on and so on. Some take chances, and some are more conservative in gambling with their future. Some take baby steps, some take huge leaps, some imagine the worst case scenario, and some don't. But I know how the story ends in the Torah. That's how you're supposed to read the Torah. To paraphrase a professor of mine at the seminary, in order to study Torah first, you have to know all of Torah. Because the text is always commenting on itself. I know the two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, I know that their lives are cut short. I know that they die in the tabernacle, and I imagine what Aaron must think every time he has to re-enter that space after that terrible moment and continue his work. And I can't help but think every time his sons and he himself, Aaron, are mentioned in this week's Torah reading of how it's going to happen and how it's going to unfold. Et Aaron achicha et banav ito. Aaron with his sons is repeated, that phrase so many times. And each time it's repeated in this morning's Torah reading, it begins to pound in my head. Ve'ela habgadim asher yasu choshen ve'efod u'me'il u'ketonet hashpeitz mitnefet ve'avnet ve'asu bigdei kodesh le'aron achicha u'levanav l'chanoli. These are the vestments that were made for them. Sacred vestments for Moses' brother Aaron and his sons. Ul'aharon ul'vnei Aharon ta'asek tonet. And for Aaron and his sons you should make tunics. V'ilbashta otam et Aaron achicha v'et banav. And you should put those vestments on Aaron and his sons. Ve'hayu al Aaron ve'al banav bivoam. And this is what they wore when Aaron and his sons came into the tabernacle. And then 11 more times the phrase Aaron and his sons is repeated in one chapter. 11 times. Aaron achicha vet banav. Aaron, your brother, and his sons. And I have to ask, why does the text keep doing that over and over again? Why does the Torah keep saying Aaron and his sons? I know it's because of how horribly it ends. But why does the Torah have to keep saying it? And so I looked in our commentaries, and there isn't a single comment, because there can be no comment. Life is dangerous. There is peril at every turn. The crevasses that surround us are enormous. We have each learned this lesson so well this year. How many people survived till this moment only to now get COVID? We can take all of the precautions. We can wash our hands. We can stay away from one another. Everyone can have their food delivered. We can wear masks. And still there are people who have made it to this point and still are now passing away. Even as millions are getting vaccinated. You see, life is dangerous. But at some point, we all have to step out into the light. Imagine what you hope for your children. Imagine the fears of raising them with all the dangers and pitfalls, predictors, and challenges. Even if you don't have children, remember for yourself what it's like. And then begin to imagine what life would be like. And then you begin to get paralyzed. I tell you this today because I want you to know it's not going to happen in just one moment where we all step out into the life, but life will come back to normal. Life will return. We will return. This sanctuary will be filled again. I imagine these halls teeming with children, adults engaged in real-time and real-place community. I envision programs and classes, services, committee meetings, dreaming together, not online, but sitting shoulder to shoulder. We get to choose what we're going to imagine about the future. And I choose to imagine the greatness, the community, the coming together. This week, we read the anointing of Aaron and his sons. And I imagine what must have been going through Aaron's mind in that moment as he watches his sons put on the tunics, the holy garments, and become anointed. The pride, the joy, the nachas that he must have felt in that moment. And I can't understand why I can't find a single commentary about what must have been going on in Aaron's mind watching this amazing moment. Maybe it's because the rabbis also knew what was coming. And so they kept silent. You shall bring forward your brother Aaron and his son from among the Israelites to serve me as priests. Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Itamar. And not a single moment, not a single word about the tragedy that lies in the shadows. And the reason for that is because the rabbis are telling us you can't live that way. You can't live wondering what lies in the shadows. Can't find amongst the rabbis not a single poo. Because you can't live afraid of what the future's going to be. The rabbis' silence is instructive. Our rabbis are teaching in their absence. Enjoy the moment. Don't wait for the other shoe to drop. The other shoe may or may not drop, but don't live waiting for it. We are not the wandering Jews. We are the worrying Jews. The chapter comes to an end. The Parashat comes to an end. You shall not offer alien incense on it, or a burnt offering, or a meal offering. Neither shall you pour a libation on it. We hear it, but no comment. It hasn't happened yet. It won't happen for a while. Don't live your life waiting for the other shoe to drop. It may or may not, but don't live waiting for it. We just celebrated the holiday of Purim, whose essential message at least in its name, is that life is like drawing lots. And we have to participate in our destiny. But remember, so much of it is just luck. And then the Parsha ends. No deaths, no endless loss, no unbearable, no immeasurable, inestimable loss. Sometimes the story just ends before tragedy strikes. If it comes, if pain and suffering is going to happen, we'll handle it. We'll handle it together. We'll hold hands. We'll hold each other and get through it. We'll be here and we'll get through it. But maybe, just maybe, the enormous challenge won't come. So why not just live life as it's given to us? So one last time. The other shoe may or may not drop. But don't live waiting for it. Shabbat Shalom.